Today we're going to talk about the diagnosis of HIV. This is a very delicate topic in that because doctors are often confronted with it and has to really keep it in secret, meaning confidentiality is of utmost importance because of the delicate nature. HIV will stigmatize the patient. Okay. So for today we are going to talk about the following outline. We will talk about HIV epidemiology for a while, and of course the characteristics of HIV, because I'm sure some of you, if not those who will become doctors, that is, if you become a doctor, some of you may encounter patients who are suspected to have HIV. Okay. So what are you going to do? Do you understand the testing itself? So for, I think Medtex, they have an idea. For now, let's take it on a blank slate, right? So HIV transmission, stages of HIV, diagnostic definition, when do you say HIV or AIDS? And of course, our main topic will be laboratory testing, which include the following. Anyway, for epidemiologic grounds, this is an old data, but I suppose this is going to increase the longer we get to live in this world. So I think 39 million. I think this is 2022. Okay, people worldwide are currently living with AIDS, and among those, 1.5 million are children. Okay, usually they are born to mothers who are already HIV positive. So yeah, and the moment they become hungry, yeah, the breast milk from mothers. So this is the distribution in 2013. Majority are in sub-Saharan Africa. Sub-Saharan Africa. Manang sa Mindanao. But in Asia Pacific, we are actually getting near that figure. So in the Philippines, this is also old data, but just give you the picture, you know, of what is going on in our country. So total reported cases in 2019, as you can see there. Ay, walang name pointer. Sorry. Top, that's and total reported cases and with advanced infection, just a number of it. If you notice, males are predominant, much more so than females. And this belongs to the 25 to 34 years old. How old are you now? Soon enough, you're going to be in this age range. So just try to be careful as much as possible. Pregnant women, yeah, just a bit. But these are just reported cases, okay, from VOH. And yeah, not much deaths, but the deaths are really painful. And soon enough, all of them will die. Anyway, yeah, that's a bleak reality right there. So just a figure again, showing you the distribution from before it was properly documented up until 2019. As you can see, the 25 to 34-year-olds have increased all through the years. And now there's this, 15 to 22 years old, close than before. This was the distribution before. They predominate, this age range predominate before, as you can see that. Now you are in that age range, right? Increasing. All right. So this is another epidemiologic data, as you can see. It seems that the National Capital Region hosts most of these cases. And yeah, the rather it is, the more concentrated the cases are. And as you can see here, Region 11. But this is more of a 10% now. That's how many cases, the Davao cases have been recently. Okay. So, and as you can see here, the riskiest behavior as reported is M to M. Ano yung M to M? Male to male sex. Because that part of the body wasn't really designed for sex. There is greater transmission from male to female than female to male. Unless there are infections down there that break the integrity of your epithelium. Like in scenarios where you are suffering from STIs. Yeah? So when that occurs, transmission is really easy for them, for these viruses. So STI and AIDS, closely related. Okay? Riskiest behavior, that is. Others, like blood sharing of infected needles, usually for recreational purposes, if you know what I mean, right? Illicit drug use, if it is intravenous. Then, many are no data, kasi hindi nila nire-report. Actually, the cases that have been reported, they don't know where they got it. Probably they're lying, or they just really don't know. So what is HIV, by the way? God damn. It affects everyone. That's what it means. Superman is a Wonder Woman. Makes us equal. Great equalizer. Rich, poor, privileged or not, healthy or even sick. Much more than sick, right? So it's an equalizer. It came from this guy. It belongs to the Retroviridae family and under the genus Lentiviridae. Well, the genus Lentiviridae is a family of viruses that is associated with chronic infections. And under this, the Retroviridae, they are called retro because they possess an enzyme that is supposed to reverse the process. Because the central dogma of the cell states that from DNA, it can be replicated to DNA, right? And then once that happens, as long as the code is open, you can also transcribe it to RNA, and then, what do you call that process again? Transcript it to protein molecules. Yes? That's the process. DNA RNA protein, which becomes the building blocks of your cell and the enzymes that are responsible for your everyday. But this one reverses it from RNA to DNA. Okay? So reverse transcriptase right there. And it is said to be positive sense RNA single-stranded genome. When you say positive sense, what does it mean as opposed to negative sense? The RNA there, once it is delivered to your cell, is actually already functional. So that means it is infectious as a molecule, as opposed to a negative sense where you need to sort of have a copy of it and make it the original strand. So that's what makes this thing a little deadlier even for laboratory personnel, like those working in the lab. And actually it requires level 4 biosecurity certification for you to run this in the lab, which is a very expensive endeavor. You need to have those suits, like astronaut, no? Then the things donning on and donning off. There are some precautions, negative air pressure, and all of that stuff. So there were two famously isolated serovariations. The 1 and the 2, HIV-1, HIV-2. HIV-1 said to be the one that is globally distributed and of high infectivity and high virulence. This guy was said to originally carry it. Before, it was known as SIV, or simian immunodeficiency virus, because it came from the primates, chimps. And it started off where? Again? Sub-Saharan Africa. Why do you think so? You don't think that those guys have sex with the monkeys, right? Of course not, right? That's a racist thing to say, man. The fudge. Well, it appears so that these tribes, as they call it, tribes, no? Mga tribu, they have this custom. They capture these monkeys alive, and then they cut off their skull, expose the brain, and eat it as is. Raw brain matter. That's a delicacy in these parts. Yeah. Well, perhaps AIDS was the greatest vengeance of the primates to humans, because as these individuals butcher them, the blood and all that stuff, yeah, that's the point of connection. I suppose there are some individuals who had sex with monkeys as well. Those weird guys. Can never really discount that idea, right? Anyway, the other subtype, serovar, is your HIV-2, which is actually just distributed locally in Western Africa. But they came from another primate, which is your Sudi mangabe. It has a tail. Chimps don't, right? I think their cry is something like ee, ee, ee. And these guys are also butchered there because they don't have the chimps. They have these guys. Same thing, same. Let's look at the structure of the virus. So it has an envelope and it has those spikes on the outside. So it's an envelope virus. Those spikes are your glycoproteins enveloping your capsid, which in turn envelopes what is located in there, your RNA, as well as the enzymes that are required for replication. Okay, so just remember this figure and the structure of your HIV. And those structures are actually encoded by certain genes that are associated with the HIV genome, right? mRNA nga lang, pero i-convert pa man siya into DNA, and then those DNA genes are going to make the template for these proteins. So that gene, yeah, Rev gene, LRT, long terminal repeats. These are nonsensical genes that are actually protective of the entire genome of the virus. Structural genes, GAG gene, POL gene, and M gene. These ones are the one carrying the code for the structural, from the name itself, structural. So if we lay it down like so and find out the genes, they're located in these positions. So we make these particular codes. Okay, and just to clean it out, here, this is the proteins that are encoded for by those genes. Just like I just point your attention to the GAG, POL, and M gene. These are very critical to the replication of the virus. Okay, so GAG gene calls for these proteins, including the nucleocapsid, the P24 right there. Remember that? That's an important protein for testing. It's actually one of the most important ones. The POL gene, yeah, viral enzymes and those proteins as well that make up for the entire capsid. And then the M gene. These are the proteins that are also essential for diagnostic purposes. Okay? All right. Just another picture showing you the more specific structures associated with the virus. As you can see, the spikes are made up of two proteins, GP41 and GP120. The 120, the larger molecule, makes up for the head of that spike, and the GP41 is the stalk of that spike. It is embedded within the envelope, which comes from the host cell. This is a lipid bilayer, by the way. So it's part of the cell membrane of the host cell. It encloses the capsid. The capsid in itself is made up of the P24 protein, enclosing all those enzymes and the nucleic acid material of your virus. So how is it transmitted, by the way? Number one, of course, is sexual contact. Humans are very creative in this aspect, if you know what I mean, you know? Very creative. I could not even imagine the ways by which humans do this, man. What the hell? As I've told you before, STIs increases the risk of transmission. When there is exchange of fluid, that's sex right there. Okay? Alright? No matter what fluid that is. Then, of course, contact with blood and other body fluids. Did you know that sharing needles can transmit? Yeah, of course, it contains blood in it. But how much does it transmit? No? So in a scenario, like for example, you're the doctor and you try to acquire blood from your patient, HIV patient, then somebody behind you was doing a TikTok video and accidentally pushed you over, and then you stick yourself with a needle. What are the chances of you acquiring the disease? They say percutaneous exposure right there, 0.3%. Very, very minimal. But I would not risk it. Bahala ka. No? Bahala ng TikTok mo. No? So, I would not risk it. So I want to make sure that when I'm doing this stuff that is risky, I make sure that I'll be safe. Okay? They even design those things that you don't really have to touch the needle at all. Okay? Those covering stuff, they have this needle cover right away. And then another scenario, especially in the psychiatric ward, if you know what I mean. Those cray-cray guys, right? For example, you've got a patient, HIV, who is cray-cray, loony. Then you try to acquire blood, but the patient, no, I'm not gonna give it to you. And then you were just laughing there, and then he spit in your mouth. And your eyes also got spit on. Or he threw some brownish material in your face. If you know what I mean, right? They sometimes put letters on the wall with it. If you know what I mean. Crazy. What are the chances of you acquiring disease by those means? 0.09%. That's mucus exposure. But it's quite different with this blood. It approaches the percutaneous exposure. Okay? Get it? For example, there's a squirt of blood and you were laughing and you don't have a mask on. Sarap ng blood mo, Brad. That's a more concentrated fluid. So, there. And of course, a person, a newborn, can get it in the perinatal period, meaning during birth and around that period. The moment when you feed also. You know, breast milk is also a known fluid to transmit HIV. So mother, infant, that's what we call vertical transmission. Between individuals, horizontal transmission. Oh, what are the fluids that are potentially infectious? Of course, number one is blood. The other is semen. Of course, semen. That's part of the sex thing, right? And of course, the vaginal secretions. Much less vaginal secretions because they are said to be volatile. When they dry up, biglang nawala. CSF also. Synovial fluid even. That one is very sterile, supposedly. But somehow the virus gets those things. And WHO has considered this, these fluids non-infectious, but there's a study before on saliva. How much saliva do you need to get infected? If I remember it right, you have to drink 9 gallons of saliva to get infected. I would not even drink my own saliva that much. Much more so on the other person, if you know what I mean. The transmission is really very low in these fluids. That's why they consider it non-infectious. But if you get enough, say for example 10 gallons of it, yeah, why not, right? Okay, let's move on to how does the virus replicate? Once it enters the body and infects the cell. But first, before it infects the cell, it has to bind and empty its nucleic acid content into the cell. Once it does, it undergoes these processes. Okay? So, but before that, I'd like to introduce the deadly handshake. What is the deadly handshake? This is the interaction of the viral molecules to the host molecules. Okay? And the main protein that interacts with the virus is CD4. Okay? That's why CD4 positive cells are the host, and they are the ones infected with the virus. So how many cells are there in the body that are CD4? Perfect examples. T helper cells. The other population, T8 cells, CD8 positive cells, they're not infected. In fact, there's a ratio of these cells. So if you see a decrease more in the CD4, but not in the CD8, suspect the death of CD4. And by any other means, how else can these CD4 positive T cells would die for? Unless they're infected by the virus. So CD4 interacts with GP120. But then there is this other molecule on the cell that is your chemokine receptor, this one. This was actually a receptor for your chemokine, right? So if a chemokine is attached to it during the interaction, this thing does not happen because chemokine receptor, once it is attached to your GP120, it causes conformational change of this protein. It gets fused with the host membrane. This is important during the fusion process. But if a chemokine is attached to it, it does not cause this conformational change, and thus the fusion is prevented. That's a sort of a theory among the researchers. In fact, I've read a paper regarding this thing. So they found out what chemoreceptor was it, and they tried to have blockers on those chemoreceptors. I don't know what happened to the study. There was no further reports on it. Maybe there was none. It's not significant, maybe. But yeah, it's a potential treatment target right there. Okay, and then so just so you know, these are the interactions of the molecular interactions of the virus with the host cell. So binding, GP120, it binds on CD4 positive cells, including some other cells. The M-tropic, which are interacting with the chemokine R5, CCR R5, is present on macrophages. So it's not just T cells that are infected, also macrophages. And there has been reports now that the brain symptoms, behavioral or whatever, is due to the infection of the which macrophage is present in your CNS again? Microglia. So they got infected there and causes changes in those and produces those symptoms. Once the exchange or the fusion happens, like so, CXCR4, that's for T cell, the chemokine for T cell, and CCR5 for macrophages. This induces the conformation will change, as I was talking about. Once it is there, HIV RNA becomes the central part of the process. And the reverse transcriptase acts in the cytoplasm. So once the mRNA is there, reverse transcriptase goes along with it and reverse transcribe it into DNA molecule. Now, the DNA molecule actually can cross that membrane, nuclear membrane, quite easily because it's actually part of the nucleus. So once it goes in there, the viral enzyme integrase comes along with it and integrates it to the host DNA. Then once it is there, it acts as part of the DNA of the host. It activates whenever the DNA is replicated, transcribed, whatever, in the event that the cell becomes activated. When does the inflammatory cell become activated? If there is an infection or if there is a trigger to inflammation. Okay? There. But sometimes infection does not happen. This probably correlate to the latent phases. In that form, you can say it is called the provirus. The provirus. The integration itself is known as what? There's a term for this. Anyway, you have to find it out. What term was that? No? Process of integrating of the virus within the host genome. Integration. Okay, so replication happens after that. Like I said, when there's a trigger for activation, those codes, those genes encode for the viral proteins. Yeah? And everything is made from those codes. Those proteins group themselves just beneath the membrane. And then, once they are there, there is a mechanism, as one researcher said, that like molecules, the ones that belong to the same group, come together on their own. And as such, as part of the HIV protein family, they group themselves there, and then assembly happens. When there is enough assembly, then budding occurs as they exist. Now, the budding itself will take part of the host membrane along with them. So, like so, this is the general bird's eye view of that. Now, they say that if enough virions exit the cell at the same time, it's going to cause deficiency of the cell membrane, and thus the leaking of the cell. And it's one way that this virus kills the host cell. And the other way, they say, that the cell dies with this, it's because of the expression of the abnormal viral proteins, which activates those cells that kill the virally infected cell. That's why CD4 positive cells are killed off in the process. So there's a fall of the concentration of the CD4 positive cells, particularly T cells. T cells, CD4 positive T cells, play a key role in the inflammatory process, both in the humoral and cellular arms. They're sort of, if you look at the white blood cells as a military organization, these are the generals, okay? And the viruses are what we call your assassins. Ninja rin mo patay ninjo. Ninja ni sila bay. Target nila ang high-ranking individuals. Ngayon, gina-target nilang mga DPWH po. Nga po yung history kahapon. Yung DPWH, ma'am, lagi sir, mga bagagnaong. So that's how it is, right? And then the patient often suffers from these events. And initially, it is classified according to this clinical, meaning the patient's symptomatology and how the patient is clinically, as you see them in the clinic, as you do an examination. So phase 1, or first stage is acute infection, clinical latency, that's what follows, and then eventually AIDS. So acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. That's when the CD4 positive T cells fall below what it can sustain. So this is a graph showing you on the right side, the blue line right there, CD4 positive lymphocyte count, and this one is the HIV RNA copies. So as you can see there, we have these stages, depending on which stage the patient is suffering from. So usually primary infection, acute HIV syndrome, where you have like a flu or lymphadenopathies and all that stuff, okay? Muscle pain, rash, non-specific really. You can't even mistake it for COVID, if you know what I mean. Or just some viral exanthem or viral infection, flu. And then clinical latency. Usually patients here often recover from that initial event and they appear to be well. This can last for years. That's why there's a line right there, continuation. But if you notice that the CD4 positive T cells actually gradually fall, like so. From infection, it falls dramatically, logarithmically. And then during recovery, it rises and then gradually falls, like so. HIV RNA also falls and rises, but gradually during the latency phase. Now, there's a level here in log 2 that corresponds to the logarithmic increase of your HIV. And that's when it falls below, I think, 200 cells per microliter. That's the critical point by which you can say the patient is already suffering from AIDS. Okay? 200 cells per cubic millimeter or microliter. This is when the patient will appear to be infected with even the slightest microorganism. Even the normal flora, yeah, but potentially opportunistic, like what can you think of? It's a fungus. It's a yeast. Yeah, Candida albicans. You can see mouth infections, right? Kasi tawag naman ng mouth infection.
Oral thrush.
Oral thrush. Oral candidiasis. You can only see this in immunocompromised individuals. Like, for example, severe diabetes mellitus even, or patients who are treated with chemotherapeutic drugs, or patients treated with the steroids. That's right, it suppresses the immune system. So in those scenarios, immunocompromised ang patient mo. Okay? Now, you can actually categorize these patients according to the CD4 positive T cell count and the clinical categories like I've shown you before. A, B, and C. What is clinical category A? What is clinical category B? Of course, the count you can see there, right? Now, if you look at the count, if it is 200 and below, that should place the patient in AIDS category, no matter the clinical category. You see, you get me? So, CD4 positive T cell count is important in your classification. Okay? So let's look at the clinical category A. This one actually covers much of the primary infection and probably early latency phase, where patients usually have a flu-like symptom and generalized lymphadenopathies. Category B, this one may actually cover much of the period that the patient is experiencing, where there is an indication that the patient have weakened immune system. That means the immune system is not working that much anymore. Like for example, before you get colds about 3 times a year, 2 times a year, for example. But now you're getting colds every month. That's an indication that the immune system is really down. Or for example, you got diarrhea every 6 months. But now you seem to have diarrhea every 2 weeks. What the heck, man? Spending much of my time in the bathroom, the CR, because of this. Yes? And you get infected with the innocuous, pretty benign infectious agents, like you told me, some of the normal flora, no? And those patients that have TB, they get miliary TB. You know what I mean when you say miliary, right? It is the widespread. Even your nose has TB. Even the nose down there has TB. If you know what I mean, miliary TB. And the lungs has these spots all over. Yeah. The blood is even infectious. That's how miliary TB is. I don't know, man. That's
whatever.
An indication that your patient is suffering from decreased immune function.
Oh my God.
All right.
Brain rot.
So, category C, these are what we call as age-defining diseases. So, when your patients suffer from this, you actually have a very, 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 very strong suspicion that this patient is suffering from TB. I'd just like to emphasize infection with this bacterium. Bacterium, it's no longer considered bacterium or even a protozoan. This one, Pneumocystis carinii. Today it's known as Pneumocystis jirovecii. Because DNA studies, before it was classified as protozoan. But now because of the DNA studies, it has been formally categorized as a fungus. Okay? So changes appear and it's now jirovecii. When you say Pneumocystis pneumonia, this one is the infectious agent. And you don't get Pneumocystis pneumonia as a normal person or even as a sick person if your immune system is sort of has a remaining function. But in AIDS patients, that function is totally gone. And even this guy. You know why you don't get infected with fungi?
Just normal.
Yeah, your body, your immune system is very effective against fungi, unless if you're immunocompromised. Yeah? There's even fungi right now in your skin, but you don't get infected with it. You live with it. You get stronger with it. You are molded by it. Well, just a thing. Okay? So, that's what happens here. You get tumors now because your surveillance system is deficient. The most common, I think, is Kaposi sarcoma. Before, in Europe, where this HIV infection was first of concern, it was detected there more commonly because they have the means to detect it and diagnose it. The first affected people were the ones who frequent baths, public baths, and they engage in the M2M activity. That's why initially AIDS was a disease for gay people, homosexuals, as they call it. Homosexual disease, they call it. And my father even told me, asking before I was still young, what is AIDS? He told me, sakit sa ero. Sakit sa ero. Being a dog, man. Just kidding, just kidding. Don't think of it too much, okay? Now, on the story of the people who frequented the baths, they often suffer eventually with these skin lesions. And a study, many people, it starts off with the extremities and then meron na sa trunk and all the areas of the body. It appears that, yeah, that was Kaposi sarcoma, which is a form of angiosarcoma, vascular tumor, mesenchymal tumor, vascular mesenchymal tumor. Here's wala nang battery. Oh. Yeah. Those bats are said to be the den of those risky behavior activities. Maybe. So anyway, let's move on to a more interesting, it's the opposite, more boring, aspect of my lecture, which is laboratory testing. Yeah. If you're medtech, you can relate to this. Perhaps you recall your lessons on this. Let's talk about CD4. Antibody detection, antigen detection testing of the nucleic acid, or the NAT, nucleic acid testing. And of course, the definitive method is your viral culture, growing out. If you are still, if you still recall the Koch's postulate, microbiome, right? Koch's postulate. If you isolated the infectious agent from diseased individual, then you grow it in the lab in pure culture, and that is the cause of that disease, right? Essentially, that's how it is, Koch's postulate. That's why viral culture is said to be the definitive method. If you grow it in the lab from the specimen of an infected person. Well, starting off with CD4 cell enumeration, this is done to evaluate the degree of immune suppression, because the lesser CD4 positive T cells you have, the more immunosuppressed you are. And yeah, like I said, the CD4 T cell count is critical in the categorization of your patients. Okay? And it is also used to monitor the effectiveness of therapy. therapy is quite weird and quite controversial here. I don't know if you're updated with the HIV world. No, because you don't really care, you know. I know, I get it, right? So you don't care, but you should care, because you're in the age range now. Remember? How is it going on? It is recommended that you perform this if you are HIV positive or suspected to be HIV positive every 3 to 6 months for testing. And before, there was no clear guidelines actually. When do you start ART, or antiretroviral therapy, which is the treatment regimen for patients with HIV infection. Before, there was no guidelines really. I think now, until now, wala pa silang clear guideline. Pero most as I've read the researches, most doctors who are in charge of these patients now treat patients right away at 350. Diba, 200, yun yung AIDS, right? Before the patient goes into that, most doctors now treat the patient at the level of 350. Although that is still, far off from the 200 level. Their rationale is said to be, you can start treatment when the body is still able to support itself. 200 seems to be the point of a PNR, point of no return. Once you go into that, masiro na yun na ba? Control, maski mo treat ka pa. That's what they believe. I think a study will be conducted with this. Perhaps one of you will go into research. We'll do this. Anyway, yeah, the 50. In very poor communities, treatment is often a life-changing decision. Why? Financial consideration. Because ART treatment is not cheap, especially if you don't have support from the government. Ikuha na tanan sa DPWH. Pistolang itim. Huh? So what's the principle used in CD4 positive T cells? It's essentially flow cytometry. But this one has an antibody that is conjugated with a fluorochrome. That means a dye that lights up when a laser hits it. Okay? So, you remember my lecture in CBC, right? The flow cell, right? The laser in that, right? So each of the cells in this particular event, in this particular scenario, we are concerned primarily on the T cells, or B cells for that matter, lymphocytes for that matter. So whenever you have a population, you incubate it with the antibodies. If they express the CD4, there, the CD4 marker, these antibodies that are conjugated with the fluorochrome will attach to them. So as they pass through this flow cell right here and the laser hits them, that fluorochrome will light up. And it is actually received by some of the sensors around in this area. So each light emission is categorized as an event. So therefore it corresponds to the count. Okay? You can also have a different stain for CD8 positive T cells. Okay, so that there. Here, CD3 and CD4. These are double positive cells right here. So they express CD4 and they express CD3. This population right here express CD3 but not CD4. This one express CD4 but not CD4 but not CD3. This one are double negative. They don't express anything at all. So these cells are the ones that you are concerned. So the computer system actually counts all these dots right here, which correspond to the event, which corresponds to your CD4 positive T cells. All right, let's move on to your antibody detection. This is a platform by which you detect from the name itself, the antibodies from your patient. And as such, it is what we call an indirect evidence of HIV infection. Why indirect? You are not actually detecting the virus. You are detecting the reaction of the body to the virus. That's why it is indirect. An important element in this test platform is the capacity of the body to form the reaction. What if the patient is not reactive? Huh? No. So the body will not form antibodies. The test will come out negative, but in fact the patient may have the infection. It's just not reactive to it. Actually, the body, once infected with the virus, the HIV, forms antibodies against it. But these antibodies are said to be non-neutralizing. They don't really play a role in the defensive aspect. It happens with other infectious agents, actually. It came out right during the investigation of COVID, because there are some individuals who form antibodies, but these antibodies appear to be non-protective because they're non-neutralizing. But at least we can use them as a diagnostic tool. This platform is used for screening because of the widespread availability of the antibodies once it is formed. And it is used for initial diagnosis of HIV infection. Most screening tests employ the principle of ELISA. Sino si ELISA? Namaligya o ko. Katong namaligya, ganun ko sa dapli. ELISA. Si pangalan ganitong Frozen. Elsa man ito, di ba? Elsa ito. Pilawgo. ELISA. You know what ELISA is, right?
Yes.
Enzyme linked immunosorbent assay. Well, you can confirm it with a direct test called your, no, not the direct test, but a very rigorous and what do you call this, robust test, which is your Western blood. So ELISA, it is used for screening. Why? Because one, easy to perform. You can perform a very huge number of specimens at the same time. So batch testing is quite very readily done here. It is highly specific and sensitive. What do you mean by specific and sensitive test? Sensitivity and specificity. Sensitive is yes, you tend to detect even the smallest amount of the infectious agent, or in this case, the reaction of the body to that infectious agent. Specificity entails what? It only reacts to that specific antibody or infectious agent. So you are pretty sure if it is positive, that you're dealing with that parameter that you're concerned about. So it uses these wells, like so. Yeah, more wells. There's even this immunochromatography platform that makes use of this principle. No? But that one is quite expensive, and it has some drawbacks from others. The standard is using the plates with the wells. What is the principle of that? Here, this is the principle. When you say primary antibody, that's the antibody produced by the patient. So it came from the specimen. Usually you have an immobilized antigen in the wells, which are produced by the manufacturer of the test. So they stick it in there, and then you add the patient serum, and then antibodies in that serum will bind to those antigens on the surface. You wash it away, the excess, and then you add the secondary antibody, which is specific to the Fc portion of the human antibody. So it's an anti-human antibody. No? That secondary antibody is actually conjugated or bound to an enzyme, usually a peroxidase. Okay? Once you wash it, no? What remains is the antibody with the complex, right? And with the enzyme attached to that antibody. You add the substrate now. Now, if there is conversion of the substrate to the product, which is usually a colored compound that can be seen or can be measured photometrically, then you are sure that the presence of your primary antibody is there. The level appears to be correlated with the degree or the rate of product formation. The faster it is, the more enzymes, the more primary antibodies. And remember, we're measuring enzymatic activity here. Okay? Alright, so there are other platforms that employ ELISA, but they tweaked it a little bit. I'm not gonna bore you with all this stuff. The thing is, they have many platforms. Some have drawbacks, some have advantages. Of course, it depends upon which test the laboratory is actually very familiar with. Okay, so there's competitive, there's sandwich, there's indirect. Anyway, my main concern with that is this. Okay, the platform and its generation, as they call it. No? Initially, during the time there's a time, 1980s, 1990s, that's when those public baths are there. Okay, now, sorry. It's first generation. What does that table show you? In the first generation, they use the antigen that is bound to the immobile surface is a lysate. What do you mean a lysate? They took the virus, cut it up in pieces, dissolve it sort of, and all the antigens that are generated with that mix are immobilized. So it has multiple antigens present. And usually the body forms multiple antibodies as well. So it catches up some of these, or most of these antibodies that are directed against those antigens. Specificity, 95 to 98. Sensitivity, 99%. So very sensitive, very specific. But there's a window period of 8 to 10 weeks. What is the window period, by the way? What is the window period? This is actually a period where the test is negative, but actually the patient is positive. True positive na siya. Pero the test came out negative. Why? Indirect measurement man ito. Right? Like I told you before. It appears that the test only detects for IgG. What is IgG? How many types of antibodies do you have? Comment. Na? Which one is produced usually in the acute phase, meaning immediately, almost immediately? IgM. IgG came after that. In fact, right about this time. That's why it only can detect during this time. So 8 to 10 weeks, and that's about 2 months and a half, sort of, right? So that's quite long in this, no? The second generation still makes use of a lysate, but yeah, it improved primarily on these parameters, but the window period is 4 to 6 weeks. They sort of purified the antigen, no longer multiple, but only one. But still a lysate though. They still have the virus chopped up and all that stuff. Still sort of a primitive way. Now the other one makes use of, when the third generation makes use of recombinant. When you say recombinant in synthetic, entirely made up in the lab. They don't require the virus anymore to produce the antigens. They just make the molecule itself. And that's why it's called monoclonal. No? Monoclonal. So greatly improved sensitivity, specificity, and the window period now is 2 to 3 weeks. Why? They're all to detect everything, every antibody, including IgM, which is produced. I just recently found out that the human body is capable of producing antibodies if you give it time. Now, the quickest time is 2 weeks, 14 days. That's why it was included in the protocol during the COVID period. No? Dapat may isolation. Quarantine. Oh. 2 weeks. 2 weeks, Jude. No? Kaya yun. It had impact on the law, on the protocol that the police is trying to institute. 2 weeks. That's the most. And then, yeah. Later on, kani mga years na ni US ni siya, ha? Dili ni sa Pilipinas. Sa Pilipinas, kung kita lang gipabuton na patadiri. Pero karon nag-improve naman po. Actually, natadiri. Fourth, no? Fourth generation. And also, so third generation, they don't use of the secondary antibody anymore. They use this binding protein right here. Mostly biotin or something like that. Biotin. And it's bound to this detector molecule right here. And then, yeah. There's interference though if your patient is taking biotin as a supplement. It's a supplement, no? Yeah. Greatly improved, but in the fourth generation, 2 weeks or less. Just a little bit before 2 weeks. 2 weeks is the most, no? So that's the least window period that you can get from this platform. So this platform can miss patients who are still in the process of producing the antibodies. Okay? All types of antibodies are detected. Both have these, Then there's an added element here. You see the immobilized portion here is your antigen, right? And you're detecting the antibody, right? They also add antibodies that detect a certain viral antigen. So this is sort of a hybrid between a direct testing platform and an indirect testing platform, as you can see there. So this protein is what protein? What do you think? The fourth generation. What is that? It's the P24. Okay. Fourth generation, P24 P24 antigen. So apart from the antibodies that are detected, it also detects the capsid protein of your viruses. Alright? So that's why it has a greatly improved parameters, testing parameters, including the window period, which is essential in detecting the disease as early as possible. Because you get to have this false sense of security. Negative ko ba? Negative ko ba? Party taon niya. Asa man? Dito sa kondo. Sa kondo na dito. Ano ito? 4G na yun. Putang galayan. Anak ng pating. Negative bang ko? Okay kayo. Recreational lang mga drugs. Sa parang mga drugs niya ba? Siyang galayan. Yung inom to the max. They don't do it outside because bawal man dali sa Davao. Dito sa kondo. Actually, in Manila, very rampant. Especially ang rumor is mga call center agents. It's way of venting out the cage that they are in their lives. They tend to work hard, but party harder. What the heck, man? Risky behavior again. No, I tell you. Some truths come out of this. Sort of a joke on that thing. It's one of the drivers for multiplication of the virus. Negative ko, for security, I spread the word. What the heck? Yeah. So that's why we need to have a test that, as much possible, does not have a window period. Okay? So these are some of the modified platforms that your antibody detection can also make use of the rapid screening test or the lateral flow immunochromatography platform. RAT, rapid antigen or antibody testing, the one that is also utilized in COVID testing. It's like a pregnancy test kit, no? So the components are these, and you know the lines, right? This is the sample, that is the sample area, sample inlet, where you place the serum or the fluid to be tested, and it's where your conjugate is located, right there. So it passes through those elements, those components by way of capillary pressure. So as the fluid diffuses out, passes through all these layers, all these components. As they pass through, reagents are added onto it until they reach the line. Okay? So depends upon the manufacturer, it can either detect an antigen or an an antibody, depending kung ano ang ina-detect nila. No? So, incubation and then detection. Alright, so this is the principle. So, analyze, for example, you're trying to detect the antigen, the reagent in the conjugate pad will be your antibodies against that antigen. And then there's a control line, the second line, which detects only the one in the conjugate. So that means you have a conjugate. So without the control line, you say that there is no conjugate. So the test is invalid. So you have to perform one that has the control line. You get me? That's what your control line is for. Okay? There. Usually, these are conjugated. These antibodies are conjugated to gold colloid, gold particles, which can be seen by the naked eye as a colored line, like so. Puyaning istorya ni. So these are some of the other ones that are employing the chromatography. This test is a little bit quicker than your ELISA, but they have also lower sensitivity and specificity because of the nature of these components. So you can use blood, you can use saliva, you can use even that. The thing depends upon the manufacturer these days. They're capable of doing anything. That's the blood right there. So the control line. That's a positive test. That's a negative test. Now, in testing, sometimes you will often see 3 or 4 lines. Now, those testing platforms uses 2 tests. One for HIV-1 and the other is for HIV-2. Okay? Now, there's another platform. It's called your agglutination assay. What is agglutination assay? Usually, you've seen this before, like reagent test, no? Yung mga VDRL and stuff like that. Mga syphilis testing. No? They make use of a latex molecule that are embedded with either antigen or antibody, depending on what you're going to detect. In most scenarios, antigens are added onto these latex balls. I'll call them latex balls, rubber balls. No? So on the surface, you'll see the antigens in there if you are detecting the antibodies. Now, if the antibodies are there, they're going to bind these latex balls together by way of the antigens embedded on them. So they will form aggregates. That's why you will see what? Agglutination. Precipitation, agglutination. Like so. So on your leftmost portion, that's the positive reaction. On the right is the negative reaction. There is no agglutination there. Okay? Then, of course, we move on to the confirmatory. Once those tests, the screening tests are positive, you need to confirm with the same testing principle. But this one is robust, rigorous test. Why? They make use of a very methodical way and very systematic way to ensure the purity and the reaction of the test itself. And they make use of a separation method known as electrophoresis. Okay, you detect actually the antibodies here. What you're separating through electrophoresis is actually the protein molecules of the virus. That's why Western blot is performed only in labs that have these capacities, because you need a culture of the virus before you can actually perform this test, because it makes use of the lysate, viral lysate. You need a culture. You know, when you culture viruses, you don't use the agar plate. Dili man mo tubo ang virus diha bay, no? Bacteria ra may mga tubo diha. What you're going to use is cell culture medium. Yes? And such culture medium entails so much cost just to maintain one. And that's why it is performed only in specialized labs. Here in the Philippines, I know of a virology section that is testing that. And that's your RITM. No? The Research Institute for Tropical Medicine. They have this equipment. And they have those level 4 labs. Ayan. This is the basic process and sort of the principle here. So a lysate, you isolate the virus, you grow the virus, and if there's evidence that the virus is there, you lyse those cells and isolate the virus. Once the virus is there, you cut it up into smaller molecular pieces, and then once you did, you add those proteins onto this SDS page. What is SDS page? Sodium dodecyl sulfate polyacrylamide gel. So it's a gel by which you add them here. And then you apply an electric current across that. Now this electric current actually separates these proteins according to molecular size and the charge. So the lighter molecules actually travel further from the origin. Usually here on top, it will travel here farther and faster. The larger molecules travel less and very slow. Okay? Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Diri na may, no? Once na kuha ni mo ni, i-add ni mo diri. This is the origin. Then you apply electric, and then it will separate it according to size, molecular size, and the charge, overall charge. So the lighter molecules travel fast and farther from the origin. The more heavier molecules travel less and slower here. So once separation is complete, you can add the antibody, the primary antibody of your patient, and then after that you wash, and then you add another anti-human antibody which is conjugated with another conjugate. Usually if they're using the imaging technique that uses X-ray or some staining technique, they have a specific conjugate there. Usually it's just the ink right there. That's your one-dimensional electrophoresis blot. So it separates into bands. So the farther away from the band is, this band corresponds to the lightest protein, followed by this protein, this protein, this protein. So each band corresponds to a protein. That is only if the patient has antibodies against those proteins. If wala, you won't see these bands because wala kang primary antibody that binds to this specific region by which your protein has been isolated to. Kuha ninyo? Bisaya ko na ako ba yan? Bisaya man tanan? Sabot?
Yes.
How about si ang Polish natin, sabot ka? Pipirit zona bliat. ang nibalan. Sorry. Ngani, pag human mo electrophoresis, apply og electric current, ma-separate na ng protein diha. Pero dili pa siya makita. Once na-complete na siya, wala pa kayo makita. Apply ka o serum sa imong pasyente. Karon kung naa sila antibody against sa katong nga protein, mubind sila diha. I-wash nimo, then you add the secondary protein. Karon na ay color development, they call it chemi-imaging. Sometimes X-ray imaging, radiological imaging, depending on the substrate that is bound to the antibody. So once makuha na, you will see the band kung naay antibody against that protein. Okay? So these specific bands are proteins, which are actually derived from the virus itself. Okay? Kuha? Good. Now, remember the genes, GAG, POL, and M genes? This will make the proteins that correspond to the virus. And that is what is used for the testing. Usually, these are the proteins that are made by the virus. So, the P there stands for protein, and the number stands for the molecular weight. P14, P15, P24. So, protein 24, I think it's kilodaltons. Daltons. Yeah. As you can see here, the farthest are your P24 because they have the lesser number, meaning lesser molecular weight. As you can see, it increases as you go up because the ones here are the largest. GP160, glycoprotein, 160 kilodaltons. Okay? Get it? Oh, sorry again, sorry. Yan. Ganyan. Huh? I tend to forget. Yan. This is the lightest. This is the largest molecule. 24, as you can see, as you go up, it increases. No? So the number corresponds to the molecular weight, such that the ones the heaviest, less distance from the origin. GP160. So what does this correspond for? So kung meron kang band sa P18, P24, P40, and P55 sa GAG genes, and then sa P31, P65, 160, 120, HIV1. No? Here is the interpretation of that. To be considered positive for HIV1, test must show GP160, 120, GP41, or P24. Pag HIV2, 2 envelope bands, or P26, and 1 envelope band. 2 envelope bands, GP34, or the trimer, which is GP105, 120, 140. Or 1 GAG, P26. Okay? That's how it is used. Now, there are some scenarios wherein the bands are quite all over the place and they don't correspond to any of these. So in those scenarios, you call it indeterminate. As long as bands are there, you can't be too sure which virus it is. Yeah? So that's when you say indeterminate. Akala ko ba itong test na ito? Parang robust. Very sure. Bakit may indeterminate result pa rin? Well, these are some of the reasons. Again, some of the reasons why there are indeterminate results. One, weak titer, meaning not that high level of production of your primary antibody, which came from your patients. Probably patients are already in the advanced stage of AIDS, so that antibodies are no longer produced. Or infection with an unusual HIV type. There were siguro another monkey, another primate, no? Or nag-evolve ang virus. But HIV virus does not evolve that much compared to other viruses like COVID. No? Evolution on a daily basis gani ang COVID, no? Or weekly. Hindi kayo. I think there's HIV 3, but I doubt that it was really confirmed, no? Or patient joined some of the experiments in the past for a vaccine, because people are trying to really vaccinate themselves, right? And especially those with risky behavior, they have a motivation to do so. Anyway, there's also some cross-reacting antibodies apart from AIDS. I don't know which of these infectious agents are, but I suspect it is the EBV or some DNA viruses as well, right? So probably. So you have to be sure that your patient is suffering from any of those. So this is an example of a blood which was taken from a hospital before. So lane 1, farthest to your left, is a negative control. You don't see any line, right? You don't see any band, right? That's a negative test. Lane 2, second one, is a positive result, especially for HIV-1. Okay? So lanes 3 and to 10 are corresponding to patients. As you can see here, the bands develop over time. So these ones I marked, the ones I marked right there, are for HIV-1. So as you can see, there's gradual development. Actually, this does not belong to several patients, but the evolution, the seroconversion of a patient from negative to positive. So seronegative to seropositive from day 0 until day 30. Okay? Yeah, that's how your bloods work. Western blot assay. There are other confirmatory tests though, not just Western blot. Western blot is a very high level of testing that you need expertise. You need to be trained. You need to have a certificate, and not just in one area, no? Because you're going to culture these viruses to get the required proteins that you are sure that came from the virus itself. You have also other tests like IFA, or indirect immunofluorescence assay, a very sensitive test. And then you have the RIPA, or radioimmunoprecipitation assay, also a very fine test but very complicated. And then you have your line immunoassay. It's sort of like a pregnancy test, but very sophisticated platform. I'm not going to bore you with the principles, so don't worry. But those are just some of the confirmatory tests. Yeah. Yeah, sorry. Now, let's move on to antigen testing. Antigen testing takes P24 only at this point in time. Although technically, you can detect any antigen if the manufacturer decides to detect more. But for now, we have only P24 for this. And they make use of a modified pregnancy test. Solid phase antigen capture enzyme immunoassay. It's quite long, but you can abbreviate it to SPACE-I. There. Yeah. The ones on your left is a negative, the ones on your right is a positive. It doesn't have a control because the line itself is already good enough. This one is like that, but very sophisticated. I'm not going to bore you with it. Now, some aspects of the P24 testing, antigen testing itself, might be considered good. It's in the direct test, di ba? And it detects the component of the virus. So why not use it as a screening test? Well, apparently, this test is less sensitive than your ELISA. Especially in asymptomatic HIV-infected patients. So, usually, antigen testing is only used in patients with high suspicion. You can use it that way. Restricted group of people. We have high suspicion for the infection. You cannot use it as an everybody type of test. Can't use it on everyone because the detection rate is only 20 to 30%. Meanwhile, ELISA, 99%. That's why this platform is often used if it is used in a larger population with your antibody testing. So it is a hybrid, no? So in that way, you actually increase the detection rate and you decrease the what? The window period. That's an important part of the testing, window period. Now, we have also nucleic acid testing. Why do we do this? It's performed in RIPM, perhaps in specialized laboratories, but not on the clinical laboratory. When I say clinical laboratory, the laboratory that runs the patient's samples, and it's done on a routine basis. Here, it's not. In the Philippines, it's not. Probably in the US or in India even, they have this platform, nucleic acid. So it makes use of the RT-PCR, real-time RT-PCR, real-time PCR, branch-chain DNA assay, nucleic acid. I don't really care about the platform. But yeah, DNA or RNA is detected. If they detect the RNA, well, it's positive, right? Apparently, it's a direct test, no? So, it's used to determine or initiate antiretroviral therapy. So, the higher the viral DNA or RNA, the more reason you have to initiate therapy. Or the same thing with the others, no? Monitoring treatment, predicting progression to AIDS, or establishing a diagnosis, depending on the trend of the HIV copies, HIV RNA copies. So, viral culture is, of course, the definitive, what they call it gold standard, but it's not used on clinical grounds. Why? Risky, biohazard thing, number one, and costly, very, very costly. Those cell lines that you have to maintain for the culture medium needs very delicate conditions like temperature, pH, humidity. You have also to add substrate for those cells to feed on. Some of those cells are actually tumor cells. They can survive any scenario, just add food stuff in there. So you can use them to test for infection with the virus. One example is the HEPA cell line. So hepatoma or hepatocellular carcinoma cell lines. Because they are immortal actually if you just provide them with the food. Okay, so this is an example of it. So there are evidence that you can say that the cells are infected. So you can use fluorescent dye, just like so. Those are actually the virions budding on the surface of the cell. Or this one, that's a cytopathic effect on the cells. So if you see the cytopathic effect, you are sure that the cells are infected. So it has grown the virus in the culture medium. That is opposing to the normal cells on this side of the. Now, this is another reason why this is not used on the clinical grounds. Turnaround time is at least 2 months. 2 months by. By the time na ni-result, patay na yung pasyente. The foods. So it's not used. It's usually for research purposes. We do have algorithms for testing that can be used to test for patients in the clinical scenario. It's like this. So usually antibody screening test. If it is non-reactive, it is reported right away. Usually laboratories who have HIV testing for screening can do this. But if it is inconclusive or in the gray zone, or if it is positive, they repeat or duplicate the test. If still in that way, or if it is negative, they can report it. But if it is either not positive or sort of in the gray area, they refer it to the confirmatory laboratory, which is SACL, or the STD/AIDS Cooperative Central Laboratory, or a RITM for blood units. SACL for patients, meaning patients who are admitted and they have samples. These samples are sent to SACL. But for blood units, what do you mean by blood units? Blood bags, no? Kanang some mga donors, no? Because there are some donors who don't really know that their HIV status. Just donate for the goodness of their heart. So you have to test it though, because you can infect your patients with that blood bag. So this is the testing algorithm once they appear in the testing confirmatory laboratory. Okay, so they also test for the screening test that they have there. If they have a negative, they can report it back. And then if there's discordant, they're going to perform, or if it's positive, they're going to perform the Western blot. So Western blot, negative, indeterminate, or reactive. If it is reactive, it is reported to the laboratory, not to the patient. No? Wherein the laboratory will do counseling. That's why laboratories who have this testing have accredited counselors. Because of the nature of the result, you have to have a very private, confidential result. They even have codes for patients who are positive for this. Basta yun na, no? So this is the graph showing you the HIV antigen antibody. As you can see, there's a rise in antibody, but this antibody is non-protective. Recently, I've come across a material that meron silang tinatawag na treatment regimen which involves lenacapavir. Lenacapavir is a drug that disrupts the. It's not the common type of target in this. ARTs usually target the reverse transcriptase. They target that, but this drug targets the capsid, the capsid formation, and this drug can be given as an injectable, and you can give it only twice a year. So very convenient, right? And it is also used to prevent the infection because of yung capsid target, no? However, the cost. One source tells me that Yetsugo, the cheaper one, and Sanlenka, Yetsugo, $24,000 per injection per person. So that means 48 per year, $1,000. Okay. Sanlenka, on the other hand, is around 50K in dollars per person per injection. I don't know here in the Philippines. Wala pa available siguro. And I think there will be a cheaper one here, especially that we have the PhilHealth Dow. There's a package in PhilHealth worth 56,000 for treatment of HIV. 56,000 pesos. Nakaman na. Tinuod na siya. Siya karon kay they cover the kanang mga diseases na drastic na measures like cancer, devastating na ba, no? Including AIDS. So they included that in the packages. I don't think that 56,000 is for inpatient. I think outpatient yan, yung 56,000. The inpatient is a bit more, perhaps. There's even groups that sort of subsidize treatment. I love you group, so let me see my source. Love yourself group. Love yourself. Alam niyo yan? Love yourself. Kay Doc Shane na siya. Wow. Very idealistic din si Doc Shane. If you enroll, you just have to pay 2,000, and then you can pay 1,500 for refills of ART treatment. So yeah, I was mistaken. 58,000 pala, 58,500 or $990. ART treatment here in the Philippines, package for PhilHealth. Okay, so there's also movements regarding the vaccine, which they build up on the success of the COVID response, right? They use mRNA. They're actually on clinical trials now, probably in the animal phase pa, animal phase. But yeah, there have also been efforts on genetic treatment, like we call this CRISPR. Have you heard of CRISPR? Yes. Yeah, they're using that, no? And also the CART, CART treatment for patients. They usually enhance the patient's immunity to combat disease. Anyway, that's an update for those. There is still no vaccine, by the way. So yeah, until then, protect yourselves at all times.
Yes.
Ayaw mo pakpak pa eh.